Good morning. The Bible speaks of God's children as pursuing excellence. And I don't know about you, but for me, I sometimes have mixed feelings about the topic of excellence because it's really attractive to me to think about the idea of being the best that I can be and always wanting to achieve more. But it can also be kind of discouraging to think about lofty goals and then to see how far away you are, or to feel like you're not measuring up because you need to be more excellent. And so I want to examine what the scriptures have to say about pursuing excellence, but I wanted to start by giving you a word of encouragement. That pursuing excellence is not about comparing ourselves to others, but using whatever talents we have to the best of our ability. And we mentioned this briefly in our class time this morning, but in the parable of the talents, I won't read this whole parable because you may have heard it before. The concept is simple. But you'll notice it says that it's just like a man about to go on a journey who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. And we here are in the place of these slaves, and this man who goes on a journey, you would either think of Jesus or of God, who's entrusting the work of the church to us. And it says to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. So the parable goes ahead and just acknowledges the fact that we don't all have the same amount of ability. And maybe we have abilities in different areas and we're not all good at the same thing, and that's okay. And it says he went on his journey. Immediately the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who had received the 1 talent went away and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. And if we were to continue reading through the parable, we see that those who had invested and had traded and had made a profit and got 5 more talents or 2 more talents were rewarded. But the one who had the 1 talent, who just went away, he hid it in the ground, he didn't do anything with it, he got in trouble. And what I wanted to point out, and we've pointed out before, is that he didn't get in trouble because he only had 1 talent. I mean, after all, it was this man's decision, the man who went on the journey. It was his decision how many talents he gave to each person. And so God is not going to be angry with us, I would say, according to this parable, because, well, you didn't have the ability to do something. But rather, he might be disappointed in us if we don't use what he has given us. And so you can think about your own life. Maybe you don't feel like you have a lot of talents in a certain area. But if we do whatever we can, that's what pursuing excellence will mean for us. And you see here in Matthew 10:42, whoever in the name of a disciple gives to one of these little ones even a cup of cold water to drink, truly I say to you, he shall not lose his reward. So something as small as getting a drink of water for someone is noticed and rewarded by God. And maybe it's discouraging to think of huge, lofty goals, but if we think about taking 1 step at a time and doing what we can, and that even the small things matter, that can give you some encouragement as we consider this topic this morning. So let's think about pursuing excellence. And the Bible definitely instructs us to relentlessly pursue excellence. In 2 Peter 1, verses 4 through 7, and then verse 10, we read, "Now for this very reason also, applying all diligence." So putting forth effort, being intentional, applying all diligence. In your faith, supply moral excellence. And in your moral excellence, knowledge. And in your knowledge, self-control. And in your self-control, perseverance. And in your perseverance, godliness. And in your godliness, brotherly kindness. And in your brotherly kindness, love. And then again in verse 10, it says, "Therefore, brethren, be all the more diligent to make certain about his calling and choosing you. For as long as you practice these things, you will never stumble." So twice the idea of diligence appears, and you also have the term moral excellence here and about practicing things. And I just wanted to take a moment to unpack the idea of diligence. I went to the Greek language resources and the dictionaries, and applying all diligence there literally means having brought in deeply all haste or all earnestness or all speedy diligence. And the word for diligence really does carry the idea of being speedy about something. So you might consider, if you had an employee or one of your children, or maybe if you have a friend and you ask them to do something for you, They might say, okay, I'll do it, but they're going to take their time, and they'll say, maybe I'll get around to it eventually. On the other hand, you could ask someone to do something, and right away they say, all right, I'm going to go do it. And they go and they do it, and they do their best, and they do a good job. And that's the idea that is carried by this idea of applying all diligence. Bring in deeply, kind of like dig deep and do this thing speedily with energy. And then again, be all the more diligent means be speedily diligent, to put forth a real effort to pursue excellence in these things. Another passage we could consider is 1 Thessalonians 4, 9 through 12. It's written, "As to the love of the brethren, you have no need for anyone to write to you, for you yourselves are taught by God to love one another. For indeed you do practice it toward all the brethren who are in all Macedonia." So it sounds like the people in the church here of the Thessalonians are being told, you're exactly where you need to be. You don't need to worry about anything. Good for you. You don't even need me to write to you. God's already taught you how to love one another. You do practice it. But then he says, "But we urge you, brethren, to excel still more and make it your ambition." Your ambition is something that you really long for, you strive for, to lead a quiet life and to attend to your own business and to work with your hands, just as we commanded you, so that you will behave properly towards outsiders and not be in any need. You would think, well, they're good. They have the love of God towards one another. But he says, I urge you to excel still more instead of just becoming comfortable with where you are and not worrying about it anymore. Then Philippians 1, 9 through 11, along similar lines, it says, "This I pray, that your love may abound still more and more in real knowledge and all discernment, so that you may approve the things that are excellent, in order to be sincere and blameless until the day of Christ, having been filled with the fruit of righteousness which comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God." I think this is a passage that really calls us to excellence, because even just the word excel, it means like to keep going, to go beyond where you've already been. And to abound in love more and more is to excel in that, to approve of the things that are excellent. And then the word sincere, the idea of being sincere is to not be have mixed motives, but to be totally in line with God's will, or to be blameless. That is a lofty goal. I don't know if any of us feel like we can say, I'm totally blameless today, but that's what we're striving for, and to be filled up with the fruit of righteousness. One last passage by way of introduction, just to show to you that Scripture really does call us to be excellent, to strive for something, would be 1 Peter 2, verse 12. "Keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles." That would be meaning that your behavior makes you stand out among people because of how dedicated you are to improving. "So that in the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of visitation." I noticed here that it says excellent among the Gentiles, and that got me thinking. So the way Peter's using the word Gentiles, could also be translated among the nations. It's sort of like among the world. So when you go out into the world at large, are you going to stand out as a Christian? And that got me thinking, because I started thinking about all the ways that non-Christians can be pretty good people, So how can you be excellent among people that already, a lot of them don't have any just huge things that jump out at you where you would say, well, that's just a terrible person. So what is it that separates a Christian from a non-Christian? Is it, for instance, dedicating an hour or two each week to meeting with like-minded people? Because that's what we're doing right now. And we might say that's one of the things that makes us stand out. But certainly, all kinds of people in the world meet together in all kinds of clubs and organizations, and many of them are focused on making the community a better place or on self-improvement. What about giving money on a weekly or monthly basis to a good cause? That's also something that people in the world frequently do, whether it's some charity they support, or whether it's maybe even something just kind of a random cause that you might think it's a good cause or a bad cause. People give their money to things that they're interested in. What about being generally kind and polite? Especially in Minnesota, I think a lot of people would say that's pretty typical. People can be known for their politeness. So how is it that we can be excellent among the world? I'd like to suggest a few ways this morning, a few suggestions for how we can consider the pursuing of excellence and standing out and being a peculiar people in the world. How can a Christian be excellent among the world? One way is to work hard. I know I have known multiple people who have told me that the other people in my workplace are frequently lazy, or the other people in my workplace, they're not showing up on time, or my bosses really like me because I'm dedicated to this job, even whatever the job is. And I think that's one way that we can stand out. That's not to say that only Christians can be hard workers, but in general in the world you see that hard workers stand out. People notice and appreciate that. And this is something that Scripture speaks to. For instance, Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, "Whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve." And in Colossians, Paul is even writing to a time where you have slaves and masters. And so he's not just saying, if you love your job and you have a great boss, work hard. He's saying in whatever situation you find yourself, if you have work to do it heartily, do it well, because you're serving Christ and you can make a good impression for him. Then again in Ephesians 6:7 and 8, "With good will render service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good things each one does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether slave or free." And we may tend to think of hard work as being hard physical labor, and that's certainly one kind of hard work. But this definitely applies to individuals who have other kinds of responsibilities or other kinds of jobs besides just hard physical labor. Whatever we find ourselves in, if we're in situations where we're interacting with other people or where we're using our minds to try and solve problems, we can do so in a way that shows our dedication, that shows we strive for excellence, that shows that we want to try to have a good attitude, and that we want to be a pleasure for other people to interact with and to work with. And I think that can help us to achieve the kind of excellence among the Gentiles, as Peter would say, that we're searching for. Another is to give liberally. Certainly, people give to all kinds of causes. On the radio the other day, I was on NPR and I was here and they were talking about, please give to support this radio station. People give to all kinds of things. But what about when a particular cause really touches your heart and motivates you to give beyond what people would normally expect for you to give? That definitely happened in this situation that's described in 2 Corinthians 8:1-5. He says, "Now, brethren, we wish to make known to you," so he's talking to the people in Corinth, but he's going to tell them about the churches in Macedonia. "Brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God, which has been given in the churches of Macedonia, that in a great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their liberality." The sentence almost doesn't even make sense. I mean, these people are in deep poverty, and yet they are giving liberally from this wealth of their liberality, this abundance that they're giving. He says, "For I testify that according to their ability and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord, begging us with much urging for the favor of participation in the support of the saints. And this not as we expected, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and to us by the will of God." So nobody expected them to feel the pain of their